Good afternoon and welcome to the August 21st Nominations and Appointments Committee. Joining me at the meeting today are my fellow counselor, Chris Miller, and our Deputy City Clerk, Shelley Smith. So we have several interviews today, and we're starting out with Savannah Baylor for a reappointment to the Animal Control Board. Good afternoon, Savannah.
Hi, how are you guys?
Good, good. So, Chris, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself.
Just as Marcia said, I'm Chris Miller, counselor for District 6.
So, and I think both of us have our own interest in dog lovers. Okay, so we share a lot of that, and we want to say we respect you, Savannah, for the work that you've done with the Animal Control Board. So we wanted to start out, at least my first question is, you're interested in staying on the control board. What could you tell us about it, the work that you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. I've enjoyed being on the board so far. When I first joined this specific department, I've been with the shelter for 8 years. But when I transitioned into this department, being on the animal control board was automatically something that kind of got thrown onto my lap, and I'm happy it did. It's been really nice to be able to have that as an avenue to communicate with other people on the board. It's been a lot easier for our department to work closer with the city, specifically with like codes and property management and things like that as far as applications and permits go. So I think for our department specifically, it's been really nice to have an officer internally on the board and to be able to kind of experience that and be in that conversation. So I've really appreciated it, and I definitely am interested in continuing to stay on the board.
Okay, and one of my interests, seeing the evolution of the Animal Control Board, what do you think the most pressing issues are that you face right now?
I would probably say, do you mean specifically with what our department kind of brings to the table?
Yeah, exactly.
So I would probably say, as far as permits go, what we're seeing the most of right now with our sorry, what was that?
No, I didn't say anything.
Oh, I think I might be echoing because I thought somebody was speaking. Sorry. So I would probably say the what we're seeing the most of between probably permits involving over 6 animals is we're coming across more than we have in the past. Thankfully, we've been able to work with the majority of these homes and trying to get them under the limit as opposed to applying for a permit, as well as the ownership of fowl within the city has been growing. Again, we've been trying our best to get people to not apply for those permits specifically just because of some of the housing complications we've been seeing in those properties. So as far as things that we're seeing that we're bringing to these meetings and discussing, I would say that those are the two most popular. In addition to regular cat issues that are just ongoing throughout the city that unfortunately we're probably going to be seeing for a long time. But we're kind of juggling through those as far as feral colonies go and feeding and things like that. But I would say the majority is probably properties over the limit and properties owning fowl.
I might have some follow-up questions, but I want to turn it over to Chris.
Usually the people that are here are applying for boards. Obviously, you're very familiar with the job because you're already doing it and with what's involved with the board. But I did want to say, first off, my dog, Max the Wonder Dog, came from the ARL.
Oh, that's awesome.
He started out as a bit of a wild child, but eventually he got to trust people, and he's the best dog that there ever was. But the second thing is, when I first came on council, your director, who's now leaving, reached out and said that she wanted to set up a meeting, and I had a tour and a really good education of the ARL, and especially about animal control, which I think the public doesn't really have a good understanding of what's involved.
Right.
It's really enlightening how much animal control and the Animal Control Board does, and some of the issues that come up, some that I couldn't believe. And I think the one thing I said from that meeting was that I think it's it makes it difficult that the location of the ARL is so far removed from the city. There are a lot of city residents that they're just not connected.
Mm-hmm.
And COVID probably didn't help that any, but if there's any way, not just with the ARL in general, but also with the Animal Control Board, that they could appear at public events in the city to help educate, or the ARL to have a representative from the board to help educate the people. So it's not so much of a putting out fires
Mm-hmm.
situation. If people know ahead of time of what is allowed and what isn't allowed, hopefully it wouldn't be this like knee jerk where you'd have to run because it becomes a negative or a catastrophe that has to be dealt with right away.
Right.
The other thing, when we had the meeting, of course, the conversation of the number of strays in the city, and it seems to be exploding, and what the answer is. And there isn't an easy answer, just as you said. But it's a definite problem, and that's another area where I think the public needs to be educated.
Absolutely.
Well, I hope that something happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know for myself, as well as I know I can speak for our sergeant here, Hayden Carroll. He also has been, you know, in the meetings and things on the Animal Control Board, very involved in that aspect. We're always more than willing to attend any kind of event, anywhere that we can, you know, like you said, have conversation and just kind of get people to understand what we do. I think people often see, you know, they might look at the Animal Rescue League as a whole or look at our uniform and they make their own assumption, and there's a lot of sometimes some negativity that comes along with that. And I think that having good positive conversation is really the start of that, so people can understand that we offer so much more, and just because they might see us walking down the street or knocking on their door, it doesn't always mean there's a bad thing going on. Typically, majority of the calls that we go on and conversation that we have is education, and explaining to people what is required by law for their animal. That is, you know, when you're looking at an animal control front and a humane police front, because, you know, we do wear both of those hats, which sometimes can be very confusing. I know it's even confusing for people who work through the Animal Rescue League to understand those two different components. So that's something that we've been, you know, battling for a long time with the public as well, making sure that they understand those two jobs that we do, and what we all can offer. Being separated, you know, location wise from the city has been something we've been discussing for quite a few years here, specifically with our department, as far as trying to be better located or closer to the city. So I know that is something that we have discussed, and hopefully we'll continue to maybe have a more long-term plan for it, whether that means a, you know, a satellite office in the city or something where our department can just be a little closer and make it a little easier for, you know, residents of the city to be able to come to us, whether that means strays or the feral cat population or whatever it may be, vaccines, just to offer more things on that front. But as far as events goes, like, definitely let us know, because we're always, even if we're not on shift, you know, Hayden and myself have gone out to events and things like that in the county. So we're always willing, and I can definitely send that information over to our communications and media team too, because if there is something going on, we can get one of our vehicles out to, or something like that. That would be great. We're always willing to do that.
The answer to your question, I already did that. There's a block party in the 6th Ward on September 23rd. I know that the ARL has already confirmed that they will be there, which I think is important, because that's you know, a strong neighborhood where the neighbors need to have a good understanding about the ARL. And when I had my meeting, we did talk about a satellite location, which I think would be a great idea. I think the topic came up of like a mobile unit, and I said, you know, really, and I know it'll all depend on funding, a permanent satellite location where people would know exactly where to go to get their questions answered related to animals and animal control would be the best. And I hope that conversation continues into the future.
Yeah, and I do know that they are working on that mobile unit. I'm not sure 100% on where we're at with it, but I do know that that is in the works, at least, which is going to be great for us to use that to park at events, or even just post that we're parked at whatever intersection. We pick a different part of the city every time we utilize it. People can come for vaccines, general vet checkups, things like that. So that's going to be phenomenal to have once that's up and running. I know that they're in kind of like the closing stages of that. So that should be hopefully coming soon. And then as far as a kind of like a satellite location, I think the end goal, at least for our department, is to have our office not even at the shelter, almost like a closer location to the city, like you said. So it's just easier for people to stay in communication with us. And, you know, I think seeing us in the city more in that aspect will be helpful for people.
Based on this conversation, even though we didn't really ask questions specifically to the Board of Animal Control and the position, you do have a good understanding of what's involved, and also you're very enthusiastic about the ARL and their mission in the city. So I don't have any other questions or comments.
Yeah, and I think for myself, I could probably go on for the next half hour talking about all animal related issues, but I'm wondering now, I have to show you this. Has the Animal Control Board presented to council recently?
Not recently, and I will have to check the schedule for when they're coming up.
Because I think that what would be good is everything that we've had a dialogue about here, that could be presented to the whole of council, and we could have it in a more public forum to address it. I think would be important. One of my issues is a lot of people take on animals as pets and don't really know how to train them and don't know how to relate to them. They always ask me why my dog is so well behaved, and I said, well, it's a lot of time spent. We've had him since he was 3 months old, communicating with him and setting a structure. But what I see is people sort of let their dogs run free without a leash, don't realize the dogs get scared, you know, don't understand why dogs might bite. And so I think just that whole educational piece might be something for further discussion with the Animal Control Board, is how you train a puppy or how you retrain a dog, as Chris had mentioned with, you know, the Wonder Dog, you know, how he needed to be retrained to be able to fit in as part of the family. So all good topics. So thank you for your willingness to continue and your commitment.
Yeah,
Really.
absolutely. Like I said, it's been great to be able to have conversation with the Animal Control Board, and it's been nice to be able to bring the properties that we have and just talk about whatever we need to do and go over the permits and stuff. And we now have a pretty good relationship and system with codes and property maintenance with those, you know, permits and stuff like that. And after we've had a few years now of it, trying to figure out logistics and which properties we think actually have the chance of being not only being approved, but physically, financially caretaking for all of these animals, you know, it makes it a little bit easier for us to navigate that when it comes to the meetings, and we know exactly what to bring to the table and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been going really well. And I think I like the idea of adding that kind of like training component to it. We do have a canine behaviorist here as well at the shelter. She's actually going to be taking over all of our behavior at the shelter, like of all species, not just dogs. But I do often hand out her business card or her extension on my business card to a lot of properties when I'm in the city, just because some people get dogs and they just don't understand the training that is needed for them until they're in the thick of it. And, you know, then we're getting complaints because of how they're trying to train or things like that. So it just kind of goes back to the educational piece of what we do. A lot of the conversations that we're having in the field are thankfully more educational than the bad side of it. So, yeah, a lot of explaining what is required of people, and some people don't even know. I mean, 9 times out of 10 people don't even know that the city has, you know, permits they have to apply for. They think they can just have chickens or they can have 10 dogs and it's totally okay. They just don't know. So a lot of it's educating and making sure that we're working with people and building that relationship so they feel that they can trust us, and, you know, we get on the same page. So training is a whole other component of that as well, that we usually try to get in every conversation that we have if we can.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm sure we're going to continue to have more dialogue. I can't take another pup, but I really appreciate what you do for finding homes for him.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and we will be making recommendations for reappointment at our next Monday's council meeting. So you'll get contact with Shelley as far as your reappointment, okay?
Okay, sounds great. Thank you guys so much.
Take care.
Have a good one.
Brandon?
Our second interview is Brandon Hernandez for a reappointment for the Youth Commission, and Brandon is joining us virtually. Nice to see you. How you doing?
Nice to see you too, although it's virtual. I'm doing
Yeah,
well. How are you all doing? I see Marcia, Chris, Shelly. Can't
That's
see
it.
who's on the other.
Just the three of us.
Great.
So, Brandon, you've been on the Youth Commission, and we want to be able to get a sense, if you want to stay on, what the Youth Commission's been doing and why you're committed to continuing.
Yeah. So I have been on the Youth Commission for a bit now. I think, yes, from the start, I'm really blessed to be able to say that. So at this point in my life now, I think I stated in my application materials, I will be moving to Spain for a year. From September up until June. So in this next year, I think my role, I would probably be stepping down as chair. So I'm optimistic that someone else would be able to take up the position. And I think it's important to leave the opportunity to someone else take up the position just so they can grow. It's important that the organization gets a new breath of fresh air, new perspectives. And at the same time, I think I would be willing, although I would be abroad, to give my perspective on things and just be someone to reach out to as well. Given I've been on the commission and I've been able to meet some people in the city, maybe some organizations as well.
So what you're asking us now is not to be reappointed, but maybe to serve in a mentorship role for new folks as they come on board.
I'd be willing. Yeah, I think that's probably my primary interest at this very moment. I think it's important that the commission has some direction, and I would be really, I would just be open to serve as that, given my experience.
Brandon, I have a question because I know a month or so ago, in front of council, we were asked to change the age limit for the members of the youth commission, to take the age limit up. And I know it was mixed reviews. Some people felt that the youth commission should be a specific age. Some people thought it was good because you're the perfect example where you've been involved. And everything you just said is exactly right. It's good to get new blood in, but then the people that are already there needs to be a transition time to pass over everything that you have learned and everything that you know to the next person, so that there's a smooth transition and things continue on in a positive way. My question is, well, actually, I have two questions. One, does it make more sense that the age limit is extended, or as we just sort of touched briefly when Councilor Goodman Henderson was talking, is it a separate category? Is there a mentorship category for older youths that are transitioning like into college, that they're still involved, but it's not the same as the actual commission? And it's not up to me. You know, I think that's something for the youth commission to have that conversation, but just from what you just said, I mean, it makes perfect sense that, you know, you're at a point in your life where you're going to be moving on to other things, but you still want to be involved, which I think is really a great thing, rather than just saying, you know, I have my life now, I don't want to have any part of the youth commission, I'm moving on. The fact that you still want to be connected is really, really great. And I think there'll be other people like that too. But there needs to be a conversation about it. And however the youth commission decides it is great. It's their commission. But I think you're like probably the first example of many who will say, you know, I'm not gonna be local anymore. I'm either gonna be moving to college or I'm gonna be doing a internship or they physically can't be here, but they still want to be involved, and how that's going to be that it makes the most sense. So I think it's great that you still want to be involved and that you want to pass on your knowledge. And that you want to give the new person sort of their own space to breathe, which I also think is important. But I do think a conversation needs to be had on the youth commission of how that moves forward for not just you, but for future people who sort of start to, I don't want to use the term age out, but that's the only term that comes to mind. Where eventually you're just going to move on to other things. And we actually had a conversation before the meeting started, and we said, you know, the youth commission is a great opportunity for young people in Reading to sort of start the process with the youth commission with the intent of hopefully moving on to some of the other boards that exist for the city, like zoning or I don't know, there's so many of them. But you know, it's sort of like that first step. It's a great way to continue to grow. And so at some point, I hope the youth commission has a talk amongst their members and says, we need to talk about this. We need to think about this. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, Chris, I appreciate you bringing that perspective. It was a big consideration and in shifting the ages. And originally, we wanted to make sure we captured. I mean, first, I think the first question is like how you define youth, because there's just it's a broad definition. I mean, seeing a young person is relative, and then also, at what point and at what age does a young person willingly or openly want to get involved with an organization? At what point are they in their lives? Are they? What are they thinking? What are they doing? And so I think it's very difficult to think about these things. I am more than willing, and I think it's important that we do revisit the conversation. I think the idea of mentorship is it's interesting. And I think I would be open to revisiting that in our next meeting. It'll be my final meeting there. And yeah, it's food for thought. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Just to circle around, Brendan, when you put in the application, I guess we received it in the beginning of July. It was to be reappointed, but from what I'm hearing from you, that's not where you are in your life at this point, to be reappointed as a member of the youth commission. In fact, you just said this next meeting will be your last meeting. So for the consideration as committee, do you want to withdraw your application for reappointment?
Or do you want to stay on the commission, but in an advisory capacity?
Yeah.
And maybe in the future, the youth commission creates some separate entity.
Well, we kind of already do that. We have what they call a facilitator. So
But
actually,
more than one. I mean, this would be like a category for.
well, yeah, that would be something we could talk about at the next meeting, Brandon. I can put that on the agenda if you'd like to talk about it right away.
And maybe not to put pressure on us answering the question now, but just to think about where we are. We could hold off with making a decision at this meeting, hear back from you as you meet with the group, and then let us know what you've decided you want to do. And because this is a little out of the ordinary as far as reappointing someone who may not be visibly or physically available. So we want, it's a new road, but it also opens up a lot of opportunities. So we want to think about, you know, what path, you know, you need to take and what helps the commission in that path.
You're sort of like the guinea pig, because I'm sure there'll be other come along, so you're the first that we need to sort of think about, like, okay, how do we handle this correctly?
Sure. I'm more than open to be that guinea pig. Again, the youth, this group has been huge passion of mine. It's been part of my life. So I've put in blood, sweat, and tears into it, and I know your investment is nothing to take lightly as well. So I have really high hope for the commission. In any way I can be involved, I know, yeah, I will be abroad, but any way that I can be involved, I will do my best to. And I again, I appreciate what you bring, because it's not to be taken lightly.
So you're right, as far as being like the guinea pig, looking at the fact that helping youth grow, when you're at the age of 14 coming on the commission, you're obviously at a much different place than you are with your life. How do we help people grow and feel secure in the leadership? And it's best heard from a peer-to-peer way of doing it rather than us older adults, if you may. I'm putting myself in that category. I won't put Chris, that's his choice. But yeah. The youth need to hear from youth, and if our city is going to survive, we need to have the youth be the ones to take the lead. Whether you choose to go somewhere else for studies or for your career path, you still have Reading in your heart. I know that.
Right.
Always,
You are the next generation.
of course. Yes. And I think that's something that's been really key to the group. In my own life, I've grown. Reading has grown my heart in a way that it wasn't in high school, and I'd like to think the same of the others in the group as well. And I think that's something really unique to the group. I think we're all working together to better the city. We're seeing a lot of parts of the city that others aren't seeing as well.
So what we'd like to do is just to give some time to sort of mull over what the next step is going to be, and sort of ask you to come back to us, through Shelley, or you know how to contact either Chris or myself, just to say this is where you think it would fit best for you in your relationship with the youth commission, with everything else. So your life's your opportunities just seem endless now, where you're at with your own personal life.
Oh, yes, I'll look forward to that conversation then. I've been really blessed.
Right.
And this has led to a lot of the opportunities that I'm able to look forward to. I feel like this was a start.
And I have to let you know that your involvement in the other youth commission members has given me a lot of hope for the city. You guys have really led the way, and I think some of us adults need to learn from you as far as your leadership skills.
It means the world. Thank you. I've been doing my best, so to hear that really means the world to me.
Okay, well, thank you. Alrighty, so we'll be waiting to hear back from you then, okay, Brandon?
Okie doke. This was a wonderful conversation. I'm always happy to talk, and I'll look forward to our next one.
Okay, you take care.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
That was very amazing, the whole progression here.
That was a great conversation.
Yeah.
He's a great person.
Yeah.
So we have another great person sitting at the table here, Mike Gucci.
Hello.
Okay, and I don't know, where's the best place for Mike to sit?
Anywhere, the whole room is on camera.
You're all decked out in your Reading Royals gear here?
I wear it every time I go out. I like fabric.
Yeah. So,
Well, I've always tried to advertise the convention center. Well,
well,
yeah.
I have to say, you guys are hitting home runs all the time with what's happening at the convention center and the civic center authority. Just want to congratulate you. Coming back from some tough times and really making it rock and roll for the city, literally.
Coming out of COVID, we weren't sure how it was gonna go, but I'll tell you what, coming out of COVID, we are really hitting the ground running. It's better than I expected.
Yeah,
I knew there would be a demand, but boy, I'll tell you what, it's better than I expected,
right.
which I'm pleased. I mean, it's even better than before COVID. And our year before COVID, we had a really good year.
And we were building because, we brought back the Royals because, we bought it from Jack Colati.
Right.
And the Royals is the most important thing in that building, because without the Royals, that building doesn't exist, because they take up 38 to 45 dates depending on playoffs and stuff like that. So, we'll just say 38, but it could be more. And if those Royals aren't there, no, that building doesn't exist. So it's important for us to keep the Royals in the city. And that's why they've already stepped up and purchased the Royals to bring it back, so they would move out.
It was almost a transition that needed to happen. I think Jack stepped in when times were tough,
Yeah.
but he was ready to go on with other
Yeah.
things in his life, so
And there was other people that wanted to purchase it. There was no guarantee they were
they were gonna keep it, I know.
So we can't have that. I mean, that's the most important tenant in that building. So,
Okay,
that's, because we can't sell, luxury boxes because, concerts ebb and flow. Some years you have good years, some years you have bad years, but you gotta have that constant 38 events for people to buy boxes, or they don't buy them. They just won't buy them.
okay, so you've been on the Civic Center Authority since its inception, am I correct?
23 years. I missed the first year.
Oh, okay.
I missed the first year. Yeah, I missed the first year. Yeah, in
Okay.
2000.
So you're committed to staying. Give us a sense of why you want to stay. Yeah.
When I started, obviously, I was mentoring under Mike Elliman, Al Boscov, Carl Herbline. They were the key people in that bringing it. But I always had a passion for the convention center, because when I was on city council, I was one of the ones that really strongly supported the convention center. So when I left council, I wanted to stay involved with the convention center, and I got the opportunity to be on the board. And I mentored under, great people like Elliman, who's still on the board, but slowly winding down. Carl Irvine, Al Boscov, great people. And I felt I learned a lot. I'm vice chairman now, Mike Dunbar is chairman, and I'm the longest serving member now, except for Mike Elliman. And when he's finishing out this term, I'll be the senior person. So my experience on that board, I think, means a lot. And Mike Dunbar really appreciates me being on the board, my experience with the board. And we have a hockey committee, and I'm in charge of the hockey committee because he understands that I've been through the rigors with the hockey, so I understand a lot of the ins and outs of that. So I'm in charge of the hockey committee. I'm in charge of we have a scholarship program, the Alfred Boscov Scholarship, and I'm in charge of that. We had to stop it during COVID because with the funds, that we restarted it up. So we give two scholarships, 4-year scholarship, $2,000 per year. Someone in Berks County, but we've had many winners. We had 2 really high winners over the years, so it's a really good scholarship. So, we give back to the community, and I think the start of this year, our fiscal year runs July 1st to June 30th. We're starting out the year really good. We just had Barry Manilow on Friday night, sold out, and then we had another concert on Sunday, a Christian concert, sold out. So. I mean, we're this fiscal year starting off. I'd say we'd be better, but a lot depends on how the Royals do and weather and stuff like that. But we're headed in the right direction again this year for another big year.
Yeah, wanted to talk because I think a lot of people think more of the arena than they do Performing Arts Center. Could you tell us a little bit about what your plans are for that? Because I know the building has its challenges. I'm very attached to that building, having been involved with the Reading Symphony for years.
Well, we purchased that building back in 2004 from the Shriners, from the riot.
Right.
And we put in $8.5 million to that building. If you remember, there was no air conditioning in that building. So May 1st, we had to shut that building down until basically October 1st. So we put air conditioning in that building. We just redid the stage last fall. So that was the big thing for to keep some of the events coming in there. The stage was really run down, so we redid the stage. It's beautiful. They did a really good job with that. And our Broadway series last year was a good year. We have some really good Broadway acts coming in this year. So that's our key thing over there, really pushing the Broadway. And now with the Broadway, we offer kind of like they do at Dutch Apple. You can get a dinner beforehand, before you go to the Broadway show, have a dinner and then go to the show. We offer that now. We started that since COVID. So, and we're, trying to get more and more people to use the ballrooms for
Exactly.
events because, we put a lot of money into those ballrooms. One of the things we're gonna do is we're gonna upgrade the kitchen over there so we can actually do more events. So we're gonna upgrade the kitchen over there because some things we can do there, but a lot of stuff we have to cook over at the arena and bring it over. We're gonna upgrade the kitchen and be able to do more cooking in there. So that's gonna be important. So we can handle more bigger banquets and stuff like that.
Yeah, because that's just such a classic old building with obviously the Shriner branding on it as far as all the appearance inside, but it's just a phenomenal when you go to New York City. Those are the kind of theaters you see Broadway shows in New York City.
Yeah.
It's about the same size and, the same perspective. So,
And if you look at our Broadway show lineup this year, it's really strong. I think we're gonna have a really good year. So,
okay.
check it out. I'll have more information on that next week when I come to council.
Oh, good, okay.
More stuff, but we have a strong lineup and like I said, we're kind of offering what Dutch Apple does now since COVID. You can have a dinner beforehand and go do it.
So the dinners are at the restaurant locations?
So in our
Are you using the ballrooms?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
good.
a small ballroom.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, we're upgrading the kitchen. We have capital money. We're gonna upgrade the kitchen so we can do more cooking over there.
Yes. You probably are in that facility pretty often.
I am.
Yeah,
Tonight's been interesting only because we usually get a mix or mostly new appointees. We sort of have to figure out if they're a good fit or not, but every applicant tonight were existing people, and I think you win the award for being on a board or a committee the longest of the three that day. But the point that I wanted to make is, people like you that have been on or involved for a long time are so important because you have a history of what's happened. And so in order to make decisions for the future, you really need to know where you came from.
Right.
And, just from my viewpoint, even though I'm not involved, the way the venues have changed over the years at the arena, where it's sort of like it caters to almost, I don't think there isn't anyone who wouldn't find at least one event happening at the arena that they would go to because it's so diverse. I mean, it really does go from A to Z.
Our mix has really gotten better. I mean,
It didn't start out that way.
no, and there was a reason why. We brought David in, who was really good at booking.
Right.
David is tremendous. So he had a lot more contacts. And some of the people we had before that did not have the contacts for some of those other events that we were trying to get. With David, he really has some strong contacts. So that's our job, to bring somebody in that can bring those acts in, and we have the right person. And that's one of the reasons why you see us being successful. That's a key position, the general manager. Without a good general manager, we can flounder.
The other thing I wanted to say, I probably go to more events in the Performing Arts Center than I do in the arena. And I'm so glad that building was saved. It is a historic building. It has so much history to it. But the one thing, and I'm gonna say this for me personally, when there's an event, and people exit the building, there are two ways they exit. They can either exit through the lobby, or there's the side hallway, which seems to be storage central. There's always chairs, props, everything. It's such a bad impression for people who have never been to Reading or to that event space to leave and see that. I don't know, maybe there's a problem with storage, but it's bad.
is that where what used to be the main entrance?
Correct.
And okay, yeah, that is a very
But, there's such a volume of people at the end of a performance that
They
they
want-
all can't fit through the one door into the lobby.
Especially when they sold out. Yeah.
I guess I tell you, I go out the back door.
I got the back door.
Yeah, I know about that business.
Oh, you got the back door.
Yeah,
You make a point to take a look because, and then for a while, I guess there was a leak in the ceiling and. Just not the impression we want to have people leaving.
Right.
This venue, so. I just have to say that.
No, that's
Taking
fine.
advantage that you're here.
That entrance has some old classiness to it if it would be redone. Yeah,
Yeah, it's very, traditional. I
yeah,
think it has a terrazzo floor, sort of reminds you of like a movie theater entrance
yeah.
to me, but, always, almost every single time, stuff stored there. And I just think this is so not what it should be.
Right, right.
Other than that, glad that you're involved. I'm glad that you stayed involved and glad that you're considering to continue.
And I think I've interviewed you so many more times than I can remember.
I know.
So thank you for serving on the 275th committee too, really
Sure,
appreciate
right,
that.
sure.
So we'll be putting it on the agenda for Monday's meeting and normal run through, and we'll be looking forward to your report
Sure.
to the council.
That's nice. We killed two birds with one stone. That's great. Cause I always come in for my reappointment. I was full in
Mhm.
property come in, for my reappointment day. So I'll be there anyway. So that's nice. Especially that.
Okay, good. So any questions for us? I'm just excited for the next season.
The only thing,
Seasons, I should say.
the only thing I will bring up, and it's something out of your control, but Mike Dunbar and I, the parking authority, we since I've been on the board, since the convention center was open, we always had an agreement with the parking authority that we get a percentage of revenues, because we bring in a lot of money for the parking.
Yeah, I remember that agreement, yeah.
And we just asked 2 months ago to just re-up the agreement. We didn't want to any extra money, just extend the agreement, and they denied it. So they don't want to share any of the revenue with us. So
Okay, just to let you know, I'm on the work committee for the parking authority, and the question we asked them is what revenue do they need? And we asked the administration, what revenue do you need from the parking authority? Because the question is, we don't want to bite it from nose and spite our face. And so if they're saying, well, I need to generate this revenue, all the income that comes in order to make our payment for the city, it sort of backfires on the city then if it hurts the civic
and it
center
was
authority.
phenomenal. I mean, our events brought in over $1 million for the parking authority last fiscal year, our fiscal year. And I think our share that we got, we're saying, was like $44,000. It's not a lot of money, but it goes toward the Royals, and that helps us. We use all that money, it goes back to the Royals, because the Royals are our big expense. Because we have to house players, equipment, stuff like that. So any money we get back from the parking lot goes toward the Royals, because that's where our need is.
So we can be bringing that up as part of the discussion with the parking authorities. They say, well, we need that money in order to pay the city X amount of dollars. We need to balance that off. Okay, so we hear what you're saying. Say it again, at the meeting next Monday when you're presenting, and it all fits into a bigger picture.
Right.
Well, thank you I remember that as being an issue as Jack was moving out, that was sort of hanging there. Hey, thank you. Fortunately, we have another meeting to get to at 5 o'clock upstairs, so you know how that goes.
Oh, yeah. Mike Dunbar up there, I wanted to talk to Mike.
Yeah, okay, take care.
All right, thanks for coming in, Mike.
Sure thing.
I'm gonna say at this point, because our other meeting's starting, we probably have to defer everything. I think we sort of made our decisions who we were gonna reappoint.
Yes.
At this point, and yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna motion to adjourn. Okay,